Ethan Cole was just a cargo pilot, not a hero, not an explorer, not even a soldier. He liked simple jobs: pick up a crate, deliver it to a space station or planet, get paid, and fly back. But this delivery felt strange from the start. The job request had come through a private channel. No company name, no sender details, just coordinates to Virelia Prime, a world famous for its bright twin moons, shimmering forests, and a royal court that almost no outsiders ever saw. The pay was unusually high, almost triple his usual rate. Ethan told himself it was easy money. Fly in, drop the cargo, fly out. He had no idea that by the end of the day, he'd be a married man. The twin moons of Virelia hung in the purple evening sky as Ethan's small freighter landed on the Royal Spaceport's golden platform. Guards in shimmering blue armor surrounded him the moment he stepped out. They weren't hostile, just very formal. "You are expected," one guard said in a smooth, almost musical voice. "Expected? I'm just here to—" Ethan began, but the guard was already gesturing for him to follow. He glanced back at his ship. Should I lock it?" Another guard smiled faintly. "No one would dare touch it. The Queen is waiting." The Queen? Ethan frowned. This wasn't in the job description. They led him through towering gates of crystal and silver. The palace interior was breathtaking, massive halls filled with glowing plants, gentle streams of water flowing beside marble paths, and walls that shimmered as if they held captured starlight. Music drifted through the air, and the scent of something sweet and floral wrapped around him. At the end of a long hall, he saw a great chamber filled with hundreds of aliens, tall, graceful Virelians with skin in shades of gold, blue, and pale silver. They wore flowing garments that sparkled with embedded crystals, and at the center, on a throne of carved moonstone, sat Queen Elira. Her skin was the color of warm gold, her hair like a cascade of silver light, and her eyes deep, endless, pools of violet. She was beautiful in a way that felt unreal, like something out of a dream. Everyone in the room was watching her. And then, they all turned to watch him. A herald stepped forward and announced in a deep, echoing voice, "Honored guests, the human emissary has arrived to share in the bonding feast." Ethan froze. "Wait, what? Bonding feast? I'm not—" But before he could protest, a servant pressed a jeweled goblet into his hand. The liquid inside shimmered like melted sapphire. The Queen rose from her throne and walked toward him with a slow, graceful step. When she stopped in front of him, she smiled warmly. "You have traveled far, human. Will you drink with me in unity of hearts and future?" Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to be rude. This was probably just a fancy welcome drink, right? Sure," he said awkwardly, raising the goblet. They clinked cups. They drank. The crowd erupted into cheers. Ethan blinked, confused. "What just happened?" Queen Elira's smile didn't change. "By our most sacred law, we are now bound as one. You are my husband." He almost spat out the drink. "I'm your what?" Around them, music swelled, flowers rained down from above, and dancers in bright silks began circling the hall. The crowd was overjoyed, bowing to him, calling out blessings in a language he didn't understand. "This is a mistake," Ethan said quickly, stepping back. "I didn't agree to—" A tall Virelian man in royal armor stepped forward. "By the nectar of stars, the bond is sealed. No law can undo it." Ethan's mind spun. He'd just married an alien queen. Accidentally, the rest of the feast passed in a blur. He was seated beside Elira at a massive table overflowing with strange dishes, shimmering fruits, glowing seafood, and roasted creatures with crystal-like shells. Servants kept refilling his goblet, and nobles kept asking him polite but probing questions about human customs. Elira spoke to him softly between the noise of celebration. "You are troubled. You think?" Ethan whispered back. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a delivery pilot. I came to drop off a shipment. Her violet eyes studied him carefully. And yet, fate placed you here, at this moment before me. He didn't know what to say to that. As the feast wound down, a robed messenger approached the queen, bending low to whisper in her ear. Elira's expression shifted. Still calm, but sharper now, she turned to Ethan. There is danger. What kind of danger? Against me, she said simply, and now, against you. Ethan's stomach tightened. Why me? You are my bondmate. If my enemies wish to break my rule, they will strike at what they believe is weakest. He didn't like the sound of that, not at all. The guards escorted them out of the feast hall, down quieter corridors. The music was gone now. The air felt heavier. Ethan tried again. Look, I don't know your customs, but there has to be some way to undo this. I'm not, royal material. Elira stopped, turning to face him. She was still calm, but her voice carried a firmness that silenced him. You carry the title of my husband now. That is more than a crown. It is a shield and a target. And tonight, you may have to use both. What are you saying? Before she could answer, a sound echoed from the shadows ahead, metal scraping against stone. The guards shifted, weapons ready. Ethan's heart pounded. From the darkness, a cloaked figure emerged, moving fast. The glint of a blade flashed in the dim light. The attacker lunged, straight at Ethan. Everything happened too quickly. He stumbled back, but the blade was already coming down. Before he could even think, Elira moved. She wasn't just graceful, she was fast. In one fluid motion, she caught the attacker's wrist, twisted, and sent him crashing to the ground. The guards swarmed in, disarming the figure and dragging him away. Ethan stood frozen, breathing hard. What? What was that? A warning, Elira said, her voice low. There will be more. As they continued through the palace, Ethan's thoughts raced. He had come here for a job, a simple delivery. Now he was married to a queen, caught in some kind of political war, and apparently a target for assassins. And the worst part? He had no idea how to get out of it. From the balcony outside their private chambers, Elira stood with her hands resting lightly on the railing, looking out over the shimmering city. You may think this is all a mistake, Ethan Cole, she said softly. But I have learned that mistakes are often the beginning of great change. He stayed quiet. The alien city below glowed with a beauty he couldn't deny. But the danger he felt was just as real. Somewhere deep down, he knew his life would never be the same again. Ethan didn't sleep well that night. The bed was huge, soft as a cloud, covered with silken sheets. But his mind wouldn't rest. Every time he closed his eyes, he thought about the cloaked attacker in the hallway, the way the blade had glinted in the torchlight, and how close it had come to him. And then there was her, Queen Elira. She had saved him. She had moved like a warrior, not a fragile ruler. But she had also said something he couldn't forget. You are my husband now. That is more than a crown. It is a shield and a target. By morning, he still wasn't sure which part scared him more. When the first rays of Varelia's twin suns touched the palace towers, a soft chime echoed through his room. The doors slid open and two palace attendants entered, bowing slightly. Your morning preparations, my lord, one of them said in a melodic voice. Ethan sat up, rubbing his eyes. I can dress myself. They smiled politely, but ignored him. Within minutes, they had brought in trays of steaming food, something like bread, slices of bright fruit, and a thick drink that glowed faintly. Then they laid out several sets of fine clothes made from light, flowing fabric. Ethan sighed. You do know I usually wear cargo pants and a flight jacket, right? One of them chuckled softly. Not in the royal court, my lord. A short while. Later, dressed in a deep blue tunic with silver trim, Ethan was led to the council chamber. The room was long and wide, with high ceilings and walls lined with shimmering tapestries. Around a curved table sat a dozen Varelians, nobles, military, commanders, and advisors. At the head of the table, Elira waited, seated with a calm posture that commanded respect. She gestured for Ethan to sit beside her. "Honored council," she began. "This is Ethan Cole, my bondmate. He will be present in all matters of state." The reaction was immediate. Some nodded politely. Others whispered to one another. Tall, thin noble with pale silver skin frowned openly. "Your Majesty," he said, "forgive my bluntness, but a human. Our laws have never welcomed off-worlders into the council." Elira's voice stayed calm but firm. "Our laws welcome my husband. That is enough." Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He wasn't here to play politics, but he could feel the weight of every eye on him. The meeting was a blur of strange terms and political tension. Rival noble houses were growing restless. Reports of unrest in the outer provinces kept coming in. One thing was clear: someone was trying to weaken Elira's position as queen, and now, because of their bond, they would see Ethan as an easy way to strike at her. After the council dispersed, Elira turned to him. "I know you wish to leave, Ethan, but Varelian law makes dissolving a bond difficult, nearly impossible." He sighed. "So I'm stuck." "For now," she admitted. "But your presence may protect more than just me. If the rival houses fear human involvement, they may hesitate to act too boldly." Ethan gave a humorless laugh. "You think they're afraid of me? I almost got stabbed last night." Her eyes softened. "They will learn not to underestimate you." Later that day, she led him through the palace's deeper halls, past guarded doors and quiet corridors. Eventually, they reached a wide chamber filled with racks of weapons, blades that shimmered, staffs tipped with glowing crystals, and sleek rifles that hummed faintly. "This," Elira said, "is the royal armory." Ethan looked around, impressed, despite himself. "You keep this in your basement?" She picked up a short blade with a curved edge and handed it to him. "If you are to remain here, you must know how to protect yourself." "I'm not a fighter," he began, but she stepped closer, placing the blade in his hand. "You weren't a husband either," she said quietly. "Until you were." The training began awkwardly. Ethan had decent reflexes from years of space travel, but sword work was nothing like dodging cargo containers in zero gravity. Elira moved with precise control, her strikes quick but not cruel. "Your stance is too open," she corrected. "You move too much," she added. "Don't aim for the blade, aim for the hand." After an hour, Ethan's arms ached, but he had managed to block a few of her attacks. "Better," she said finally, lowering her weapon. "But you will need more than skill. You must learn to think like your enemy." "Meaning?" he asked. She met his gaze. "If I were my enemies, I would not attack you directly again. They will wait. They will strike when you feel safe." Her prediction came sooner than he expected. That evening, Ethan was in his quarters, reading from a glowing tablet. One of the attendants had given him. He had just started to relax when the lights flickered. A faint, high-pitched hum filled the air. He stood, frowning. "Hello? Is this normal?" The hum grew louder, and then a small, disc-shaped object floated through the open window. It was no bigger than a dinner plate, but its surface was covered with tiny lights. Ethan's instincts screamed danger. Before he could react, the device emitted a sharp pulse of light. His knees buckled, his vision blurred. And then Elira was there. Her arm sweeping in a blur. The device shattered against the wall, sparking before it went dark. She knelt beside him. "Are you harmed?" "I'm fine," he muttered, trying to stand. "What was that?" "A seeker," she said grimly. "A hunter machine. designed to stun or kill quietly. The palace tightened its security after that. Guards stood at every hallway corner. Elira moved Ethan into rooms closer to her own private chambers. One night, while walking together in the gardens, he asked, "Why do you care this much? You barely know me." She looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Because our enemies will think you are a weakness. I will prove them wrong." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The moonlight made her golden skin almost glow, and Ethan felt the weight of the situation settle deeper in his chest. 2 days later, the palace guards brought in a prisoner, a spy caught sneaking near the outer walls. The man was trembling, but his eyes were defiant. Under questioning, he admitted what Elira had already suspected. Several noble houses had joined forces to overthrow her. They believed her marriage to a human made her vulnerable. "And the human?" Elira asked coldly. The spy sneered. "When he is gone, so will your rule." Ethan felt the words like a stone in his gut. He had never asked to be part of this. But now, if he left, it might cost her the throne. That evening, Elira led him to a quiet balcony overlooking the glowing city. "You see now," she said softly. "Your presence here is not chance. It is a weapon. We can use it." "Use me?" Ethan asked. Her lips curved faintly. "A human among Varelians is rare, unpredictable. If they cannot guess your moves, they cannot plan against you." He didn't know if he liked the idea of being a weapon, but a part of him wanted to prove the spy wrong. Ethan stood in the middle of his chamber, staring at the small metal device in his hand. It was no bigger than his palm, sleek, black, and stamped with a manufacturer's mark he recognized instantly. Earth Tech. His chest tightened. No way, he had seen devices like this before. They were short-range signal beacons, used by smugglers and private security teams to mark valuable targets. In the wrong hands, they could be used to track a person anywhere in a city, or even through the vacuum of space. Someone from his own species had put it here. A knock at the door made him jump. "Ethan?" It was Elira's voice. He quickly slid the device into his tunic pocket before answering. "Yeah, come in." The door slid open and she stepped inside, her golden skin catching the light. "You look troubled." He forced a small smile. "Just thinking about training." Her violet eyes studied him. She didn't press the matter, but she didn't look convinced either. The next morning, Elira took him to the palace training hall, a wide space filled with sand, practice weapons, and armored dummies. "Today," she said, tossing him a wooden practice blade, "you learn to move as we do." For hours, she drilled him in Varelian combat stances. Their style was quick and fluid, with sweeping motions meant to confuse an opponent before striking. Ethan's arms ached, his legs burned, and his tunic was soaked with sweat. "You are improving," she said, after he managed to land a clean strike on one of the dummies. "Feels like dying," he panted. She smirked faintly. "Better to feel it now than in battle." Over the next week, training became part of his daily life. Elira insisted he learn not just sword work but unarmed, fighting, and the use of Varelian short-range blasters. What surprised him most was how quickly he adapted. Years of flying cargo in dangerous sectors had given him sharp reflexes, and once he learned the rhythm of Varelian combat, his movements grew smoother. Some of the palace guards even began watching him train, nodding in quiet approval. But the device in his pocket weighed on his mind. He didn't tell Elira about it, yet. He wanted to know who had planted it. One night, while the palace slept, he slipped out of his chambers. Moving quietly through the halls, he followed the layout he'd memorized over the past days, heading for the servants' quarters. If someone had entered his room without being seen, they likely had access to every part of the palace. Near the kitchens, He spotted movement, a short, hooded figure slipping into a side corridor. Ethan followed, keeping to the shadows. The figure entered a small storage room. Ethan waited a moment, then pushed the door open. The figure spun around, eyes wide. It was a young human man, maybe 20 years old, wearing servant clothes. "You," Ethan said quietly. "You put something in my room." The man's eyes darted to the door. "I don't know what you're talking about." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice. "It was an Earth tracker. Who are you working for?" The man swallowed hard. "You don't understand. I was ordered to—" Before he could finish, a sharp whistle echoed from somewhere outside the room. The servant's expression turned to panic. "They're here," he whispered. "I can't." A bolt of blue light flashed through the doorway, striking him in the chest. He crumpled to the floor. Ethan's heart pounded. He dropped to his knees, checking for a pulse. The man was alive, but unconscious. Footsteps pounded toward the room. Ethan grabbed the man under the arms and dragged him behind a stack of crates, just as two shadowy figures entered. They weren't palace guards. Their armor was black, matte, and unmarked. One of them scanned the room with a small device. "Signal's gone. Someone got to him first." Ethan held his breath. The other figure muttered, "Orders are to pull out. We'll try again later." They left as quickly as they came. When the room was clear, Ethan exhaled and shook the unconscious man gently. "Come on, wake up." The man groaned, blinking groggily. "You have to leave. They'll kill you. They'll kill her too." "Who's they?" Ethan pressed. Before the man could answer, palace guards burst into the room, weapons raised. Elira was with them. Her gaze went from Ethan to the servant, then back. "Explain." Ethan told her everything. The device, following the servant, the black-armored intruders. Her jaw tightened. "You should have told me as soon as you found the device." "I wanted to know who was behind it," Ethan said. She studied him for a long moment. "You may have found more than you realize. Those were not Varelian soldiers, and their armor, I have seen designs like that only once, on a smuggler vessel from Earth." His stomach dropped. "So it's true. Someone from my own people is helping your enemies." "Yes," she said softly, "which means you are not just a target. You are a key to their plans." The next days were tense. Elira doubled the guard around the palace. Ethan trained harder than ever, driven by the knowledge that he couldn't rely on anyone else to keep him safe. One evening, during a break, he asked, "Elira, why do they want you gone so badly?" She looked out toward the glowing city lights. "Because I am changing things. Old houses lose power under my rule. Trade routes open to new worlds. Enemies fear the future I build, and now you are part of that future." He was silent for a moment. "I didn't ask to be." "Neither did I," she replied, her voice calm but steady. "Yet here we are." The following week brought grim news. A captured spy revealed the enemy's next move. They planned to strike during the upcoming Unity Day celebration, when the palace would host thousands of visitors and security would be stretched thin. Elira called a private meeting with her closest. "Commanders and Ethan, they will not risk a direct siege," she said. "They will use the celebration as cover. They may try to separate us or strike when we are distracted." Ethan leaned forward. "Then we turn their plan against them. We let them think we're vulnerable and catch them in the act." The commanders exchanged glances. Elira's lips curved slightly. "You are beginning to think like us." Training shifted focus. Ethan learned palace escape routes, how to signal guards discreetly, and how to move through a crowd without losing sight of a target. Elira sparred with him every morning, pushing his speed and reaction time. By the night before Unity Day, Ethan's body ached, but his mind was sharper than ever. He stood on his balcony, looking over the city. The festival lights had already begun to glow in the streets below. Behind him, Elira's voice broke the quiet. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" He turned to her. "Not really, but I'll be there." She gave a small nod. "That is enough." From early morning, Varelia Prime shone with color. Bright banners hung between the crystal towers, music drifted through the streets, and the air smelled of sweet roasted fruit. The celebration marked the unity of the great houses, a time for peace and joy. But for Ethan, it felt like walking through a storm that hadn't broken yet. The device in his pocket still glowed faintly, a quiet reminder that someone, probably human, was tracking him. He had kept it hidden from most of the palace guards, but Elira knew. They both agreed. Unity Day was the perfect moment for the enemy to act, which meant they would be ready. The main palace courtyard was already packed with guests by midday. Nobles in glittering robes mingled with traders, musicians, and citizens from far-off provinces. The twin suns cast golden light over everything. Ethan stood beside Elira at the top of the ceremonial steps. She looked every bit the queen, tall, graceful, and wearing a long robe threaded with silver light. "You don't have to stand here the whole time," she murmured, without turning her head. "And leave you alone in this crowd?" Ethan replied, quietly. "Not a chance." Her lips curved faintly. "Good." They descended into the crowd, guards keeping a careful distance so as not to alarm the guests. Ethan scanned the faces around him. Most smiled and bowed, but he kept noticing little details. Someone looking away too quickly, a hand disappearing into a cloak, eyes that stayed fixed on him a second too long. The plan was simple: move through the festival as though nothing was wrong and watch for the first sign of trouble. But Ethan could feel tension in the air, like everyone was holding their breath. An hour passed. Music played. Dancers spun in colorful patterns. Children ran laughing through the plaza. For a moment, Ethan almost let himself relax. Then he saw it. Near one of the food stalls, a man in plain clothes raised his hand slightly. It was a small gesture, almost unnoticeable, unless you were looking for it. A second later, a cloaked figure at the edge of the crowd shifted position, revealing the black matte armor Ethan had seen before. "Trouble," Ethan said under his breath. Elira's eyes flicked in the same direction. "I see them." Before they could move, the attack began. The first explosion came from the far side of the courtyard, loud enough to shake the ground and scatter the crowd in panic. Guests screamed and shoved past each other, trying to flee. From 3 different directions, black-armored soldiers pushed through the chaos, weapons raised. They weren't firing wildly. They were moving with precision, straight toward Elira and Ethan. "Stay close," Elira shouted, drawing a slim, curved blade from beneath her robe. Ethan pulled the compact blaster she'd given him during training. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. The first attacker reached them, swinging a short energy staff. Ethan blocked the strike with the side of his blaster, then slammed his shoulder into the man's chest, knocking him back. Elira's blade flashed, forcing another soldier to retreat. More guards poured in from the palace gates, but the enemy had already scattered into smaller groups, forcing the defenders to split up. It was a distraction. Ethan knew it instantly. "They're trying to separate us," he called. "Then we don't let them," Elira replied, moving to cover his left side. They pushed forward together, cutting through the crowd as calmly as possible while fending off attackers. Ethan fired short, controlled bursts, taking down 2 soldiers who tried to flank them. Suddenly, a dark shape dropped from above, another enemy leaping from the balcony of a nearby building. Ethan barely had time to react before the soldier crashed into him, sending them both to the ground. The man's grip was strong, his visor hiding any sign of emotion. Ethan twisted, remembering Elira's training. "Don't fight the weapon, fight the hand." He slammed his elbow into the attacker's wrist, making the blaster clatter to the ground. Ethan grabbed it and fired point blank. The soldier went limp. Patrie. The time he got back to his feet, Elira had cut a path toward the palace steps. More enemy forces were closing in, but the palace guards had formed a defensive ring around them. Then Ethan saw him. At the far edge of the chaos, half hidden by smoke, stood a human man in a dark coat holding a small controller. Even at this distance, Ethan knew what it was, the same type used to activate a signal beacon. The tracker in his pocket pulsed harder. The man was controlling it. Without thinking, Ethan broke from the formation and sprinted toward the figure. "Ethan!" Elira's voice was sharp, but he didn't stop. The human's eyes widened when he saw Ethan coming. He turned and ran, weaving through the fleeing crowd. Ethan chased him into a narrow alley behind the market stalls. The man glanced over his shoulder. "You shouldn't be here, Cole." "You know my name," Ethan said, keeping his blaster raised. "I know a lot about you. And I know the Queen will fall today, whether you protect her or not." Ethan stepped closer. "You're working with them, why?" The man's smile was cold. "Veralia's resources are worth more than her life, and Earth's not going to pass up that profit." Before Ethan could react, the man tossed a small sphere to the ground. Smoke exploded outward, choking and blinding. Ethan coughed, stumbling back, but fired twice into the haze. When the smoke cleared, the man was gone. Cursing under his breath, Ethan sprinted back toward the palace steps. The battle in the courtyard was turning. Palace guards had pushed the enemy back toward the gates, but the attackers fought fiercely. Elira stood at the center, her blade moving like liquid silver, cutting down anyone who came too close. Ethan rejoined her, covering her flank. "You ran off," she said without looking at him. "Found the guy controlling the tracker," he said, firing at a soldier trying to breach the guard line. "He's human. Got away." Her eyes narrowed, but there was no time to argue. The enemy was retreating, melting into the smoke and chaos. When the last of them were gone, the courtyard was a mess. Overturned tables, broken stalls, scorch marks on the crystal tiles. Injured guests were being carried to safety, and guards searched every corner for stragglers. Elira turned to Ethan. "You saved me." "You saved me first," he replied, breathing hard. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "We fight well together." That night, the palace was quiet again, but the air was heavy. In the council chamber, Elira stood at the head of the table, her advisors seated around her. "Today proves our enemies are more desperate than we thought," she said. "They will not stop. We must be ready for their next move." Ethan leaned against the wall, the tracker device in his hand. He had deactivated it, but it still felt like a weight. "I think I know what they want," he said. "And it's not just your throne. It's control over both our worlds." The council fell silent. After the meeting, Elira walked with him through the palace gardens. The night air was cool, the twin moons glowing above. "You could leave, you know," she said quietly. "Return to your people. Stay out of this." Ethan shook his head. "Not happening. They're my people, yes, but whoever's behind this, they're not my kind of people. I'm staying." Elira's gaze softened. "Then we face what comes together." The palace was no longer a strange place for Ethan. Weeks ago, its silver walls and glowing halls had felt like a dream. Now, it felt like home. The guards nodded at him when he walked by, the servants smiled, and the people outside the palace bowed, not because he was human, but because he was now their king. But Ethan still felt nervous. The grand hall was full of alien leaders, all gathered for the final peace meeting. The war between the Queen's people and their enemies had ended. But peace was fragile. If things went wrong today, it could all fall apart. Queen Soraya stood beside him. Her long robe shimmered like liquid light, and her crown reflected the glow of the hall's crystal ceiling. She spoke to him quietly. Remember, Ethan, they will try to test you, but you have already proven yourself to me. Trust your heart. Ethan nodded, though his heart beat fast. The leaders of the enemy side entered. They were taller than Soraya's people, with sharper features and armor that still carried scars from the war. The hall grew quiet. An elder alien from their side stepped forward. "We have accepted the Queen's offer," he said. "But before the treaty is signed, we have a request. From the human." Ethan frowned. "From me?" "Yes," the elder replied. "You saved our wounded soldiers in the last battle, even though they were our enemies. We want to know why. Why would you risk your life for those who fought against you?" The hall grew tense. The alien leaders stared at him, waiting. Even Soraya's people leaned forward. Ethan took a deep breath. "Because," he began, "war is something that ends one day. But the people who live after it, they have to share the same world. If I had let them die, their families would hate us forever. But if they live, maybe, they will tell their children that a human saved them. That's how peace starts. Not just with treaties, but with memories." The elder alien studied him for a long moment. Then he gave a slow nod. "You speak like a true ruler." The treaty was signed. The crowd outside the palace erupted in cheers. Ethan felt relief wash over him, but Soraya's hand found his. She smiled. "You did more than sign a treaty today. You changed how they see us, and how they see you." That night, a great celebration filled the city. Lights floated in the sky, music echoed through the streets, and food stalls gave out dishes from both nations. Ethan walked among the people, no guards, no crown, just himself. Children ran up to him, some with human-like faces, others with alien features, all laughing. A little alien girl tugged at his sleeve. "Is it true you married the Queen by accident?" she asked. Ethan laughed. "Yes, but it was the best accident of my life." Soraya joined him, holding 2 cups of a sweet, glowing drink. She handed one to him. "You've adapted to this world better than I expected," she teased. "And you've been far more patient with me than I deserve," he replied. Later, they returned to the palace balcony. The view showed the city lights stretching to the horizon. Soraya leaned against him. "Ethan, when you first arrived, I thought you were nothing more than a strange human caught in politics. But you've become part of my people's story. I cannot imagine ruling without you." Ethan smiled softly. "Funny, I can't imagine going back to my old life." They stood there in silence for a while, watching the floating lights drift higher into the night sky. The war was over. The city was safe. And though challenges would come, they would face them together. Somewhere deep inside, Ethan realized, everything had changed the moment he said yes in that strange alien ceremony, and he wouldn't change a thing. The next day, a messenger came with urgent news. A new alliance wanted trade and cultural exchange with their kingdom. It was proof that the peace they worked for was already spreading. Soraya looked at Ethan. "Are you ready for another diplomatic meeting, my king?" Ethan grinned. "As long as you're by my side, I'm ready for anything." And so the human who had once stumbled into an alien marriage walked forward, not just as a husband, but as a ruler, a bridge between worlds, and a reminder that sometimes the greatest changes in life come from the most unexpected choices.